Acceptance is very powerful. When we resist something and say, no, this can't be this way, it shouldn't be this way, we actually keep it in place. You can also go into guided meditation and actually meet a future self who has overcome this that can help you. My husband is also a therapist, and he once worked with a woman, and she was really very poverty stricken, having a horrible life. She wanted more than anything to be a bank teller. So he had her sit in another chair and pretend she was her future self and a bank teller. And for her, that was a big dream, and that would have been a huge accomplishment. And she sat in that chair and really got the feeling of what is it? What does it feel like to be that bank teller? She got into the vibration of it. And he said a year later, he went to this bank he didn't usually go to, and guess who was at the teller window? And they both chuckled and celebrated the fact that she had, gotten there.
Welcome to the Knife Show, where we dissect the human psyche and society. My name is Denzel Mensa. I'm an ENFJ.
And my name is Joyce Meng, and I'm an INFJ. And today we're here to talk about raising your vibration with Eve Delunas, the author of Survival Games Personalities Play. And so I'm really honored that you're here, Eve, and I'm excited to talk to you about this topic that's very near and dear to your soul.
Thank you, Joyce. I'm really excited to be here too, to speak with both of you and get to know both of you a little bit better as a fellow ENFJ
Yes.
preference person. And so I'd like to talk about something that is not directly related to type and temperament, and that is raising the importance of raising our vibration. I actually started a podcast a couple months ago, and it's a weekly podcast, and it's called The Abundance Zone, because I feel so passionately about how important it is that we raise our vibration, because that's the key to me to transforming our world, one person at a time. And that is the key also to living a more beautiful life. So I would like very much to talk about that. I guess I should start by saying what your vibration is, in case there's
Yeah.
somebody listening that doesn't understand this concept.
Yeah. And I was
Physics.
going to ask, what even got you interested in that first before how? So, yeah, because,
Okay.
I feel like, some people, they don't just wake up and be like, or I think most people don't just wake up and be like, okay, so this is what a vibration is, and I want to start helping people to raise it. So it's like, okay, what made Eve as special as she is to feel that calling to be able to do that?
Okay. Well, I've always been involved in kind of the intersection of psychology and spirituality. I have a doctorate in psychology, and I was a licensed psychotherapist, excuse me, in California for about 40 years in practice. Now I still have a license, but I'm living in Georgia, USA, and so I'm not practicing psychotherapy anymore. I'm practicing coaching. But as a psychotherapist, and as very interested in spiritual growth, I've always looked at understanding people more deeply through lots of models, including temperament and type, and understanding how do we grow spiritually, and how do we improve our lives, and how do we make um, things in our lives work better for us. And years ago, I discovered this idea of the law of attraction, which I think most people are familiar with nowadays. And I understood it to a certain point and began to experiment with it, and found that I could create some things in my life that I really wanted beautifully, and that other things just didn't happen at all. I failed miserably in my efforts. And I went about trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? Why is that? And what I came to realize is that um, there is such a thing as a vibration, and we all hold a vibration. And physicists, quantum physicists, have been wonderful about helping us to understand about how this vibration operates and what comprises this vibration. And a vibration is like a frequency. Everything, everything has a frequency. Even things that are non-animate have frequencies, and every person does. And what I came to understand is that what our frequency is determines, that's what really determines what we attract into our lives. Often we think about the law of attraction, we think about manifestation, and we focus on um, imagery or thoughts. And those are part of your thoughts, are part of your vibration, but it's only one part of your vibration. And thoughts can be of a higher vibration or of a lower vibration. Thoughts like, I'm a loser, are of a lower vibration. Thoughts like, um, uh, I'm open to beautiful things happening in my life today, are of a higher vibration. But it's not just thoughts that comprise your vibration, it's also your feelings, your emotions. And it's not just the emotions you hold on a daily basis. Are you feeling mostly frustrated, angry, annoyed, stressed? If you are, you're much like me and a whole lot of people. Or are you taking time to feel gratitude and love and joy and wonderment and all of those beautiful emotions? So, our emotions are another piece. It's not just the emotions that we're feeling today, it's also any emotions that we chose not to feel as we were growing up and we repressed. Those are still a part of our vibration. Another part of vibration is our words, what we speak. You know, are we speaking and saying and expressing gossip and judgment and self recrimination? Um, that's a common thing for all of us to do. Uh, or are we speaking words that are of a higher vibration, words of appreciation, words of curiosity, words of peace? And lastly, our vibrations are comprised of our belief system. And our belief system, much of it is subconscious. And our subconscious kind of runs a lot of our lives. Much of what we do is because of the role of the subconscious. So, our subconscious beliefs, there are many of our beliefs that are very positive in our subconscious. Maybe we have the belief people are fundamentally good, or maybe we have the belief um, I'm a talented singer, or maybe we have the belief I'm a lovable person. But typically, it's hard to grow up in our world without reaching your ages, even, and I'm much older than both of you, without having some limiting subconscious beliefs. And they're such a part of us, we don't even know they're our belief system. Things like, I don't really deserve to be happy, or I'm not good enough. Almost every one of us has a belief that we're not good enough in some way. Um, it's real because we're told we're not good enough. We're taught to judge ourselves and berate ourselves and compare ourselves. Who teaches us? Commercials teach us, movies teach us, people that raise us teach us. And they're well meaning, they don't, but that's what they've been taught. Our religions sometimes teach us that. Our schools, the way our educational systems are designed. So we end up with these subconscious limiting beliefs that are in our vibrational field, and they affect what we attract into our lives. So, uh, my desire is to help people to keep their vibrations as much as possible in what I call the abundance zone. What happens when your vibration's in the abundance zone? Well, you tend to attract more of what you desire into your life. Now, I want to specify that our vibrations go up and down all the time. So none of us will ever always keep our vibration in the abundance zone. It's just not likely, unless maybe you're some kind of a ascended master who's come back to the earth to bless the rest of us. But most of us humans, we go up and down. Of course. I mean, being in a 3D reality as we are, and a duality where there's always a light and a dark and a good and a bad and an up and a down. It's really hard not to have your vibration go up and down. But the goal is to keep it in the abundance zone as much as possible. Because when you do, then what happens is you're opening yourself to this field of unlimited potential that surrounds us. And you are likely to attract things that are in alignment with your higher vibration. What are those things? Well, things that you've been wanting. It can be a more loving relationships. As you raise your vibration, your relationships tend to improve. It could be opportunities, new opportunities that you've never had. It can be money, financial abundance. It can be freedom, the freedom to live your life the way you want to do what you want to do with your life. It could be creative inspiration. You tend to be more connected to your greater self, more in touch with your inner guidance, and more in love with life. Life gets better and better and better. So I'm in love with teaching people how to do this. And that's why I started this podcast, because it's just a 6 to 18 minute podcast every week. But every week I try to give people a piece of remembering to change their thoughts, change their feelings, change some of these limiting subconscious beliefs, become aware of what they are, and teach them how to actually reprogram them. I'm really into giving tips and tools, and I'm just talking an awful lot right now. So maybe you have questions to ask, but it's a little complicated. So I wanted to kind of give you the big picture.
What are some tips and tools you have for people to raise their vibration?
Okay. Well, I just had a podcast where I talked about lightening up, especially some of us that are really into spiritual growth and, you know, and becoming who we desire to be, to activating our potential, or expressing our greatest potential in this lifetime. We can end up being pretty heavy about that. So one of my tips is to lighten up. First of all, to lighten up on ourselves, because self-judgment, as well as judgment of others, but especially self-judgment, is a really low vibration. And as I said a little bit ago, we're kind of trained to really judge and berate and criticize ourselves and use a microscope and focus on our flaws and compare ourselves to other people and beat up on ourselves for our mistakes, and even think about things we did in the past and do this shoulda, coulda, thing to ourselves. I should have been this way. I shouldn't have done that. And all that is a waste of time and energy. Not only does it keep your vibration out of the abundance zone, but it feels terrible and it doesn't help. It doesn't make you better. So I like to teach people to love themselves, to love even your mistakes, because they're just a part of helping you to grow, to love your biggest flaws, to love the part of you that maybe you're even ashamed of or that you wished wasn't there. We all have those parts. to really embrace who you are and not decide, well, I'll be good enough when I accomplish this or lose this weight or um, get this degree or drive this car or whatever it might be that we tell ourselves. So that's a big part of lightening up on ourselves, being more loving and gentle to ourselves. Um, we can also lighten up by focusing on gratitude. Gratitude is one of the highest vibrations we can hold. Spending a few moments when you wake up in the morning and before you go to sleep at night, just bringing to mind someone or something you're grateful for. And not just thinking about gratitude, but feeling gratitude really is very important. And it's one of the most powerful ways to transform your life. And none of this is news to anybody, I'm sure. I'm sure you've heard this before. But if you're like me, living in a 3D world, it's easy to forget it 5 minutes later. I mean, we get so distracted, and there's so many pressures on us, and so many stressors, and so much information, and things to think about and do and accomplish and be. It's easy. It's easy to lose sight of these things quickly. So I'm here to remind people. Um, so gratitude. Another thing is joy, having fun, lightening up by having a good time, doing the things we love to do. A lot of us who are driven to achieve, we put aside those things and say, well, after I've done this and this and this and this, then I've earned the right to play a little. And and uh, that's all backwards, because playing, having fun, actually raises your vibration, puts you in the abundance zone, and opens the door to more good stuff coming into your life. And I know to some people that's going to sound like woo-woo garbage. But I tell you, I lived a long time. I've used this practice. I've taught it to hundreds and hundreds of people, worked in psychotherapy with lots of people, and it works. It works. It changes your life. It really does. It's that simple. So lightening up, having fun. Love, opening your heart, doing beautiful things for other people. And it doesn't have to be giving money. It can be giving of yourself. It can be saying a prayer for somebody. It can be expressing kindness to somebody you care about or a stranger. Being more loving is another way. Joyce and I were talking the other day about wonderment. You use that beautiful word, awe. Finding the world is a spectacular place. Our bodies are amazing. They are miraculous. And being able to hone in on some of the beauty in the world, the exquisite beauty that surrounds us, if we look for it, the flower growing through a crack in the sidewalk. I mean, wow. Talk about life wanting to exist. There's so many places to find beauty and appreciate in wonderment that beauty. That's a very high vibration. So those are some easy ways that our listeners right now can go off today and practice those things. You can remind yourself to feel grateful. You can remind yourself, okay, what am I going to do for fun today? Just fun. Okay. And let yourself do it and just surrender to it. You can remind yourself to look for miracles and beauty in the world. You can remind yourself to practice kindness and generosity towards others, to feel love, to allow your heart to open and feel love. You can remind yourself when you catch yourself judging yourself, being hard on yourself, criticizing yourself. You can remind yourself to not do that and switch over to words of compassion. Talk to yourself the way you would a dear friend. Focus on loving the flaws.
it's really interesting, everything that you're saying. I'm eating it all up, and a few things came to mind. One, I uh, I made a video on my YouTube channel last year, called "Being an Alchemist of Life," and essentially, I was pretty much saying the same thing. I had just finished reading the book The Alchemist for the first time, and I had been thinking a lot about the concepts behind the book, and I feel like I had already, been practicing it, but now the book had just inspired me to like make a video about it. And so the thing that I pretty much said, like, I always referred to myself as an alchemist, in the sense that I mean, I take a shot every time I say, oh, I made a video about that. But yeah, I made a video years ago, and I think it's called Pessimists Are Very Creative. And the reason why I said that was because I knew this girl who literally, like, good things would happen, and then I would look at it like, whoa, this is amazing, whatever, whatever. And then she would be like, yeah, but then that could also just mean that boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, oh, I mean, yeah, yeah, I guess that's true, but interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that. And it seemed
Uh-huh.
like no matter, like, it came to a point where I would literally count down in my head every time that I thought there was good news, and it almost became like a game. That, like, let me scare her to good news and see how she can shift this into bad news, whether it's
Yeah, uh-huh.
with her or with myself. And to this day, like, the girl, she seems to have gotten better for sure, but definitely she's way more in the I'm unhappy and life just isn't fair and that kind of camp. Whereas, like, for me, I'm on a very different kind of camp, and I feel like we both have bad things happening to us. But it's not even that I'm ignoring the bad. But when I really count all of the good things that are happening and put it like on a ratio, it's like there's so much more beauty and things to like look at and be grateful for, that I'm not going to allow the small percentage of bad things that are in my life to really keep me down. And so I acknowledge that it's there, but then I just as much acknowledge how much more beauty and goodness there is. And for that reason, I really believe that I cannot stay in a place of victimhood or sadness or trouble. And then on top of that, I believe that that is, like, part of, like, being that alchemist, where it's like, in the same way that a pessimist, it could be like very creative, like an alchemist or an optimist or realist, whatever. An optimist can be very creative in the sense that, like, okay, this bad thing is happening. I can't do anything about it. So since I cannot do anything about it, then I'm not going to allow it to destroy me. Like, I'm just going to continue to live my life, and I'm going to make the best of whatever situation that I have. An alchemist essentially takes everyday metals like lead, whatever, and then they make gold out of it. So, um, if I'm, like, gonna live every day and I'm gonna see, just like you said, like, our bodies are beautiful. Like, if I see a butterfly, if I see a hawk, if I see a tree, if I see a leaf falling from the sky, if I eat pizza, like, these are things that people could see as just regular metals. Like, oh, it's just mundane. I see a pigeon every day. But it's like, no, but do you really take a moment to think about the beauty behind a pigeon being able to just take off and fly, how it grew, came out from an egg, and just stuff like that. That's like, wow, life is really interesting. Life is really beautiful. And the pigeon was able to survive for as long as it did. There's this Bible verse, like, his eyes on the sparrow. And so that he's watching over you too. And it's like, yeah, when you think about how, like, man, this bird, I don't know how old it is, but obviously it was able to be in an egg and then hatch and then grow to as big as it is. And it's just living its life just freely day by day. Like, there's a beauty to that as well. And yeah, so when you think in that kind of way, like, it's just very difficult, in my opinion, to stay in a negative headspace. And then the last thing I wanted to toss out because now I'm the one who's saying a lot, but you just sparked a lot of thoughts. I'm reading this book called Love and Limerence by Dorothy Tanav. And the other day, one of the things that I read was very interesting to me, and I'll try to like read through it like really quick. So she's quoting someone, and she said that I remember that Simone de Beauvoir used the term ecstatic union, and I kept thinking those words at the time, almost from the very first moment when Rick looked into my eyes so deeply he didn't merely look at me. I thought that word ecstasy. After our first night together, I woke up with this strange and wonderful feeling like nothing desirable or nothing I had ever felt before. Nothing describable or nothing I had felt before. Problems, troubles, inconveniences of living that would normally have occupied my thoughts became unimportant. I looked at them over a huge gulf of sheer happiness. I even enjoyed the prospect of dealing with them with Rick. And then later on, she says more like, the work was easy. Things that had annoyed me on previous occasions were taken in stride, and I had strong impulses to help others. I wanted to share my joy. When Mary's typewriter broke down, I virtually sprang to my feet to assist Mary. Mary, my former enemy. No one was an enemy anymore. My affection included the universe. I loved every single creature. A fly landed on my desk. I hadn't the heart to brush it away. And I was reading that and I was just like, wow, this is the kind of feeling that I want to have like all the time. Like I am so against, like I know that there's definitely a time for, oh man, like this really sucks and boom, 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 boom. And people go through hard things in life. So I don't want to
Mhm.
discredit, or I don't want to make it seem as if like I'm never in a sad, state of mind after something happened, or that when other people come to me about sad issues, then I'm like, oh, there goes so and so being negative again. But I think it's a ratio thing. And it's like, you can tell the difference between people who seemingly like look to stay in that mode versus
Mhm.
people who like, no, things just happen and it's natural, like, huh, yeah, this is what I'm processing right now, and this just happened to me, and I don't want to be here, but I kind of am. But I'm going to get through this and I want to rise above it. And I really have a respect and admiration for the latter.
Aesthetic union is such a beautiful word. I'm gonna add that to my dictionary now. And I think that's the reason why I love the word awe so much, because awe feels like an ecstatic union with the world in the sense that it melts away your ego. So what I'm hearing is like you feel a love or a beauty so big that it melts away that self-consciousness, it melts away the self-judgment, or it melts away the cynicism or pessimism you have towards life, because love brings you a level higher, or it when your vibration is raised by something, you become your better self and you start to melt away those lower thoughts that you might have had. And when we talk about pessimism and the creativity behind that, it makes me think about how pessimists, it's very ego driven sometimes to be a pessimist, because I think it comes from a fear of getting hurt. And so when you're afraid of pain, you're going to try to predict the most negative scenarios from situations. So you're like, oh, I already know, I anticipate what's going to happen. It's going to be negative. So I know it's going to hurt me. So I'm not going to hurt as much when it does slap me in the face. And so it comes down to the question, do you want to be right in the ego standards, or do you want to be happy? And you have to choose one, because you're not going to get one or the other. And it's not right in the objective sense, but right in your ego sense. Like, does your ego just want to reconfirm what it already thinks, so you're right in your own head? Or do you want to be happy and let go of this game of trying to protect yourself, but you're calling it reality? And so sometimes people will describe self judgment like it's a universal thing. It's like, it's not a thought that you just think you're wretched. It's like, no, everyone in the world thinks I'm wretched too, I swear. And like, no one else does, but you are convinced that everyone sees you through your own lens. I see it as a form of dysphoria. You know how people say that there's body dysmorphia? People can feel like their body doesn't look nice even when it looks normal, but they're like, oh, I could be thinner and thinner. I think people have self-esteem dysphoria, so they might appear normal or great in someone else's eyes, but when they see themselves through their own eyes, they see this disgusting, wretched person not worthy of love or being cared about. That oftentimes comes from childhood wounding. Maybe a parent figure never gave you the love that you needed to feel secure in the world and that you were loved unconditionally. And so you carry that around, but you blame yourself for never having gotten that need met, that there's something inherently deficient in you. When really it was just your parents didn't know how to show you love in the way where you could internalize it on a deep level. And so, yeah, it's just a lot of food for thought. So thanks, Eve, for that.
Yeah, I love what both of you are saying. Yeah, you're talking, Joyce, about the ego, and I like to say, and Denzel, you were talking about being in essence. I like to say, you're either in ego or essence, and the more we're in essence, the more we're in the abundance zone. Something I do want to clarify, because you mentioned, when bad stuff happens, and bad stuff does happen. If we look at it from one angle, it's bad stuff. It's painful. We, even when we're in the abundance zone, it doesn't mean our lives are perfect. Obviously, because our sometimes the things that cause us pain are the things that are meant to challenge us to grow. They're life pushing at us a little bit to get out of our comfort zone, or to learn something about ourselves, or to expand our being in some way. So it doesn't mean it's perfect. And it's interesting what you said about your perspective. Denzel, I love that perspective, and I understand what you're saying about people that are kind of stuck looking at things differently. And I loved what you said, Joyce, about often that's their protection. The ego's meant to protect us. It wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep our lives very small so that we don't get hurt more because we've been hurt before. So people who are very pessimistic, very often they're unconscious about it. Like they don't even see themselves that way. That's just how they've always been. Like the last thing to discover water is the fish. And when you suggest something different, it's threatening to them for the reason that you said, Joyce, because it's like, if I open myself up to the possibility of my life being good, then what if it didn't happen? I'd be even more devastated. So I'd rather stay in this dark place where I know it's familiar, rather than open the door to something new and better in my life. Yeah.
It's interesting because self-judgment thoughts come from beliefs, and beliefs feel like reality to us, and
Right.
so people have a hard time separating that. And so sometimes having higher vibration thoughts, someone who's so used to lower vibration thoughts will feel like they're lying to themselves. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, if I say that I am lovable, I'm really just lying to myself, is how it feels, even if it's not true. It's just that it's so hard to not take our beliefs personally and say, yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I'm a strong believer in the importance of doing inner child work, for that very reason, because I think to change our deepest core beliefs that are limiting us, I think it helps. The easiest way to do that is to go back to when they were first formed. And all ages of ourselves exist in the quantum field, including our future selves. They're already there too. And so when we use imagery processes and do inner child work, we can actually change our present and our future by changing our past. By going back, having our adult self in our imagination go back and nurture and love and reprogram the child. Basically, tell our child self, explain that they've come to some false conclusions about themselves and the world and other people. And it's natural that we come to those conclusions because we develop those beliefs before the age of 6. And our brains aren't even fully developed at all before the age of 6. So we hear dad yelling at mom and we conclude that's about me not being good enough, you know, which isn't the case at all. But that's our conclusion because we are coming from the limited ability to analyze and understand other people's perspectives at that age. So I wrote a second book. My first book is about personality types and dysfunctional behavior. It's about how different personalities defend themselves when they're under stress. That's Survival Games Personalities Play. My second book is about basically getting rid of your limiting core beliefs. It's called New Science, New Brain, New You. I don't have a copy here in front of me, so I can't hold one up, but New Science, New Brain, New You. And and what I did is I took everything I learned from working with hundreds of people doing this work as a psychotherapist, and I condensed it and I came up with a process that people can use with themselves or therapists can use with a client to reprogram themselves. What do you do? How do you do it? What do you do in order to change some of these feelings like I'm garbage and everybody else sees me as garbage and I'll never be anything except garbage. So I like what you're saying, Joyce, about sometimes it takes something more than just telling yourself, I'm not garbage, I'm lovable. We can't buy that because there's this big part of us that's bought into this fiction. And so working with the part of us that bought into the fiction when they bought into it is really important. So in my book, I talk about how do you identify what scenes to go to and what do you do when you find the scene you want to work on. And it really works. I mean, you can do that kind of work and you can do it with yourself. You don't have to go and pay someone else to do it with you. But sometimes if it's severe trauma that you've experienced, if it was a very severe traumatic experience, I recommend doing the work with a trained therapist.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I kind of wanted to even touch a little bit on what Joyce had brought up and ask you, Eve, about the whole idea of like lying to yourself. Do you think that people like, is that kind of often the cure? Like lying to yourself or telling yourself these things, even if you feel like you don't believe it, because soon enough, that's like pushing you into that good vibration enough to where it's going to become natural and you're going to realize like, wait a minute, I'm not lying to myself. I'm actually just changing my perspective. Would you say that that's kind of how it is, or is it a little bit more like intricate than that? Is that a bad thing to do? Like, yeah.
That's a great question. And you're onto something here, Denzel, because the subconscious responds to repetition. And the subconscious is like a software program, lots of software programs up there. And so if you want to change the program, repetition of a new way of thinking helps to actually build a new brain pathway. Something I talked about in my book is the fact that we now know you can build a new brain pathway when you're 80 years old. Your brain is amazing with what it can do. So yeah, there is such a thing as pretend. I would say pretend you believe it. Or do you know somebody who does believe that about himself or herself? Pretend you're that person. And how would that person be feeling right now? But the more you can get into the feeling of believing it, the more powerful it's going to be, because the subconscious listens to repetition and emotion. Especially because it's mostly in that midbrain that we're talking about. We want to affect the midbrain is not the cerebral cortex. It's something deeper that's more about emotion and motivation. And that tends to be, we think, where we record these kinds of beliefs. So to change it, if you can use your imagination and picture what it would be like if you really believed that about yourself, that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Yes, repeat the sentence to the affirmation to yourself, not in a negative way, not I'm not garbage, but as you said, I'm a worthwhile person, or I deserve love. And then imagine okay, maybe Denzel really believes that he's a worthwhile person, and I respect that about him. Okay, how would Denzel feel about himself in this situation? What would he be talking? How would he be talking to himself in this situation where I just made a mistake or screwed up someplace? And then also um, uh, pretending, pretending as you go through your life. Okay, today I'm going to pretend that I am like Denzel, and I'm going to every moment I'm going to start thinking about this, that, or the other. Um, I'm an NF, and one of the things I don't do very well, or I didn't when I was younger, is I was not very rational about things. And as an ENFJ, that was a kind of a weakness, and so I kind of have a lot of irrational thoughts. And one of the things I did is I found somebody who was one of the most rational people I knew. And when I faced a situation where my emotions and my thoughts were kind of going off the wall, you know, um, and and uh, and I knew that I was not being very rational. I'd think about this person. I'd think, how would this person handle this situation? What would they be thinking right now? And it really helped me to develop that. So, yes, repeat the affirmation, write it down. I'm a worthwhile person, write it down. Um, but also close your eyes and think about, if I was if I really believed I was a worthwhile person, how would I be living my life? How would that feel? How would I feel when I woke up in the morning? What would I do differently? And just pretend and play with your imagination. Your imagination combined with saying the words, combined with feeling what it feels like, is the way you change.
That is beautiful. That's that, especially as an ENFJ. That's like very like NI. Like, okay, let me imagine a world, a reality where I am a worthwhile person. Um, I think an even funnier game would be like, okay, like let me imagine a carbon, not a carbon copy, but like a alternate universe version of me, maybe like coming to like visit me or whatever. And this one is like really like strong and like confident and everything. And don't approach it in the ways like, yeah, so he's better than me and everything, but like approaching the ways and like, oh, he's going to help me to become as great as he is, because he is still me. Like this is in me in a way. And I feel like that would be like a very interesting thought exercise to have, because especially as NFJs, for NFJs that are watching it, like the more that you can imagine it in your mind, then the more that the SE can come out to bring it into fruition. So that's pretty much like how I see it. And then on top of that, take another shot. I made a video called Leaning into the Magic last year. And it was essentially on this idea of the Pygmalion effect, and having this idea of like, the more that you believe something, the more real it becomes. So the illustration that I gave was that there's this show called Ben 10 when I was a kid, and he had a watch, not this watch, but it was a bigger watch, believe it or not, and it was an alien device that had 10 creatures on it. And whenever he would choose each of the creatures and push it down, then he would become that creature for a fixed amount of time. I loved the concept, and when I was a young teenager, then I actually got a toy of that watch. And one of the characters, one of the aliens on the watch, his name is XLR8, which is accelerate pretty much. So the superpower that it had was like it was very fast, and I ran track, and I exactly. And so I
Um,
had the watch, and I wish I could find pictures, but every track meet, like I would have the watch, and before it was my turn to run, I would literally, do the whole thing and push it down and make myself believe that somehow this watch was making me run faster. And my rational mind knew, bro, it's a watch, but somehow literally believing that the watch was helping me run faster, the track records showed that when I had the watch, I had better times every single time than when the times when I didn't have the watch. And of course, it could have been a limiting belief, like how when people have good luck charms, like, oh no, now I can't talk to people because I don't have my lucky shirt on. And that can also do damage to you. But, I tried to keep it from getting to that point. And I think that either way, like, it's still showing how, quote unquote, lying to yourself, or telling yourself certain things and repeating certain things, it really does help you. Because I'm sure that maybe after some time, I wasn't able to test this, but somebody did steal the watch from me. I guess that they wanted to also start getting track times as mine. But but
Mm.
afterwards, I feel like if I were to had still done track, then my times would have been better than previous times, even because I had still trained myself to run faster. And I feel like that could be applied to so many things in life. Like if you just tell yourself no, this is what this is, then that's pretty much what it'll become. This idea, I always love the quote that Elliot Hulse from YouTube said. He said that leaders don't always make the right decisions, but they make their decisions right. So it's almost like you were destined to mess up, or you were destined to be in this situation and do whatever and choose the path that you did. But then once you did choose that path, once you did get over here, then now you just make the best of it. And it's like, oh, all along I was supposed to make this decision, I was supposed to make this mistake, stuff like that. And then you're able to have peace with it, because at the end of the day, reality is going to reality. And so it's just all about how you look at it and what you do with that reality, because you can't do things that you can't help but do. Like you can't change things that you can't change. So the best thing you can do is change your perspective and outlook toward it and how you respond to it.
Yeah, acceptance is very powerful. Acceptance is when we resist something and say, no, this can't be this way, it shouldn't be this way, we actually keep it in place. Resistance, what you resist persists, as they say. Yes, your idea about having a self from an alternate reality, and there are selves in alternate reality, you have them, access one of them, or a past life self who had a lot of confidence, and felt differently, or your future self. You can also go into guided meditation and actually meet a future self who has overcome this, that can help you. And it's very powerful. My husband is also a therapist, and he once worked with a woman, and she was really very poverty stricken, having a horrible life. She wanted more than anything to be a bank teller. So he had her sit in another chair and pretend she was her future self and a bank teller. And for her, that was a big dream, and that would have been a huge accomplishment. And she sat in that chair and really got the feeling of what does it feel like to be that bank teller. She got into the vibration of it. And he said a year later, he went to this bank he didn't usually go to, and guess who was at the teller window? And they both chuckled and celebrated the fact that she had, gotten there. Another really fun thing to do, I sometimes have had groups do this, is like the two of you pretend that the next time you meet, that it is 5 years from now, and pretend that you've accomplished all of your hopes and dreams and that your life is just absolutely fantastic, and interview each other and get excited for each other. And it is so fun to do that and to see what comes out of your mouth. And it's also good to get into the vibration of what you're wanting to create, because in your speaking it, like I am now, I don't know what your dreams are. Let's say you want to have a big business, or maybe you want to publish a bestseller. I am now a best-selling author, and my book is #1 on the New York Times best-selling list. And the person listening goes, wow, how does it feel to be that? How does that change your life? What is that like for you? Great exercise.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really fun. And
I
people
really
are
think that
shocked
could,
when they do it.
yeah. I think that would be fun to play with Joyce, like in the next video that we record, like uh, a knife show episode of us fast forwarding to 5, 8, 10 years from now, and just I guess dress up a little bit differently and literally get into character of, okay, we've taken the time to envision where we would like to be 5 to 10 years from now. And now, like we're catching up and maybe it's been a while, and it's like, Joyce, so like, tell me, like, now that we're here on camera and everything like that, like, and we could literally title it something like, Denzel and Joyce 5 to 10 years from now, or, something like that. And, maybe 5 to 10 years from now, like looking back at the video and then seeing like, oh, we really manifested that, or like what tweaks that we made, or like maybe even from being in that headspace, then from Joyce, like maybe I'm obviously NIing here, but like Joyce might ask me a question, like, so now that you're like here as this life coach and boom, 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 like how does it now feel like with these people, or like, something, and then I might like shift my perspective and be like, you know what, I always thought I wanted that part, but I realized it's not as great as I thought. And maybe that'll change my current self to be like, maybe I shouldn't pursue that as heavily as I always have been, but I had never put myself in the position of like, oh yeah, this is what it is until this moment, which is to me seeming like another way of actually sitting and talking to my future self, like my future self saying like, hey, Denzel, like, I know that right now you feel like you just need this thing, whatever, but man, I have it and it's not even like all that great. It's not going to hurt you, but boom, boom, boom. And I don't even know what that thing would be, but I'm just thinking of like how helpful it would be, like really using, just like you said, using your imagination and being creative in that way to then take those intuitive insights and create a reality with it. I feel like that would be very fun.
And it's good for the sensing types too to do this,
Mm,
because you're making it real. You're
mm,
making it more real by speaking it, by having somebody interview you. It's easier for those who don't find NI as easy to
right,
get into it
right.
and get excited about it. And it's important to let yourself flow when you do it and just see what comes out of your mouth, because you might surprise yourself with what you say. Joyce,
Wow,
are you up for that?
Yeah,
right.
I'm so up for it. Yeah. Vibrations is such a natural NF topic. I feel like we're birthed into the world and we already know what a vibration is without being able to vocalize it. We just know it exists. And people see us as woo-woo for it, but it's very real and it impacts us daily. And so there I think it's very beautiful how you talk about the alternate self and the future self, because it's like if you imagine hope, you create it. The universe is playful, so if you give it something to dance with, it'll dance with you, and it's like the genie that will grant your wish if you just let it know what your wish is. And so I think a lot of people use the alternate or future self method, like Beyonce. She has Sasha Fierce. And so when she goes on stage, she actually
Yeah.
puts on a different person until she became Sasha Fierce and then she killed her. It's like, I no longer need this alternate persona because I feel like this person.
Uh-huh.
And Adele actually copied Beyonce, and so when she would go on stage, she had an alternate persona, and it works. Like it, so I think it says that people have hope. If you feel like you are unlovable or you are someone that is not worth being cared about, there are methods that can get you out of that. And so I think Eve, you shine a light, a beacon of hope into people's lives
Mm.
that they can radically change their circumstance or even their perception of their circumstance. Maybe it's great. Maybe they're in the top 1% of money and every single success factor, but they're just miserable because of their own internal world. You're really helping people calibrate the most intrinsic part of themselves. And so from that, everything else can ripple in a positive way. And so you're giving people the foundation blocks that they need to become healthier and happier people through raising their vibration. They raise the quality of their life. And so you provide that framework for how people can do that. And so you take the psycho-spiritual and you translate the NF into something that other people can understand too.
Thank you. However, I want to say both of you are doing the same thing. And I have so enjoyed talking to the two of you. You guys are amazing. And I mean, you get, understand, get it. You totally live the things that took me 50 years longer than you to understand. And it's so exciting to me. I get goosebumps hearing you speak, both of you, because you are, you give me hope for the future. You give me hope for the future. And both of you have just such depth and such wisdom, and you're so young. It's so wonderful. I love it. So thank you for sharing these things with me. And boy, I think um, you're both here as light workers to make the world a better place, and you're already doing that, and that is absolutely awesome.
Thank you. That means so much coming from you. I really deeply appreciate that. Because yeah, I am always thinking like, what can I do today that would make my future self like even better? Like, I don't want to lock my future self in the place that it is that he is in right now. So even when you were talking about like, oh, if you meet your future self and like and you get it and you go in those guided meditations, then to me I was also thinking, well, if my future self helps me right now, he's also going to change, and then I'm going to have to keep that going so that that way like if he's
Right.
already at like a 90 and then he helps me to get to a 30, whereas before he was able to be at the 90 at whatever age he is because I was at a 25. Well, now next time I speak to him, he's actually going to be at a 95 at that same age, and it's this whole thing. And then I love what Joyce also said about the Sasha Fierce persona thing. It reminds me of a friend I have who he's been trying to get more into his extroverted intuition, like as an INTP. And I had told him that one thing that he could do is he can like pretty much he is really suppressed a certain side of him, and I told him that, well, it's almost like having a limb maybe that's like that has a stunted growth. I feel like you have to kind of separate it from yourself to an extent and focus more on feeding that part of you because it's still a part of you. So I told him like, yo, name it, and he named it his middle name. And so I was
Oh.
like, all right, so now that is still a part of you, but it's a separate entity for now because every other part of you is already like fully grown, matured, and well fed and everything. So now, if we're going with like Sasha Fierce thing, like, Beyonce could feed Sasha Fierce. But personally, I didn't really like the idea of like, oh, now like she killed Sasha. I see it more as like she integrated Sasha back into her
Hmm.
because Sasha
Hmm.
has always been her. She just separated Sasha and be like, okay, for whatever reason, everyone else in me who's all authentically me is fully matured and developed and everything. But you are stunted. You did not get enough food. You did not get enough development, whatever. So we have separated you, isolated you, so that we can all focus on growing you and maturing you. And then once you are like back to our level, we're going to integrate you back into us, and we're going
Hmm.
to take off that name Sasha because now you are no longer Sasha. You are me. You've always been me, but we had to separate you for a bit so that we can focus on feeding you to get you back into me. And I think that that is something that I think that would be like really helpful. I guess just personally, instead of like the idea of like, oh, you've now killed that because it's like that is still you. You don't want to ever kill it. You want to just integrate it right back into yourself.
I like what you're saying. Yeah, I had kind of a visceral reaction when you said she killed her too, because I had the same thought. Like, why not integrate her? And
Yeah.
so rather than killing her, because
Yeah,
it just
the spiritual side of you is like, yeah, it's the holistic approach. You got to integrate it into your whole, not cut things off.
exactly. We don't want to cut things off. We want to integrate them. Yeah, become more
Yeah.
whole.
The
Yeah.
ego cuts things off in us. So
Oh
is our
yeah.
essence, but then it makes us ignore our essence or pretend it's not there. And so the ego is the way that we play our survival games against ourselves, to just plug Eve's book again, Survival
Yeah.
Games
Oh, thank you.
Personality.
The
All right.
ego is very clever. Yes. That's a
Yeah,
whole nother topic, but the ego's amazing.
it is definitely. And
The
so
way it'll sneak in the back door when we least expect it.
it's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's what self-sabotages us, but
Uh-huh.
we can get back to where we want to be when we realize.
Yeah.
But the ego is also like a part of us too, so I'm not saying to cut it off. It's to be integrated. The ego
Right.
is a
I
part of
knew what
us.
you meant. I was
Yeah.
just like, let me, for people who are watching who will take that a step further, it's like, all right, now I have to kill Zeke. It's like, wait, I'm gonna kill Zeke.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
Zeke might not ever want to actually grow.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
but I did want to ask Eve, like, once again, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all the insights that you did and helping us. Like, you might not necessarily be our literal future selves, but I feel like you've given us a little bit of a peek into that. Like, wow, like I am from the future. I've lived what you lived, and I see where you two are at and how you are helping other people and this, that. And I'm so proud of you. And that in it of itself is like really helping us a lot. And it's really been inspiring. Like for the rest of probably this year, like I'm going to be really reflecting on a lot of the things that you put here. You've already made me way more comfortable with this idea of pretending. And like people always make like being delusional or whatever, like as a bad thing, and it can definitely be bad. Like lying to yourself or whatever can definitely be
Yeah.
bad. Being irrational can definitely be bad. But if you are knowingly using these things as a tool to elevate yourself, to bring up your vibration, then well, my irrational thought of like, yeah, this watch is going to make me run faster, but I'm winning track meets is not a bad thing, or like
Not
my
at all.
irrational or deluded thought of like, no, I am the most attractive person or whatever it might be. Like, it's not really like a bad thing. I'm really lovable, whatever. So yeah, thank you for joining us today. And I wanted to just ask if there's by any chance, if you have like any final words before we close out that maybe you didn't get to share.
No, I just want to say thank you to the two of you for having me. This is the first time I've ever been interviewed on YouTube. So
Nice.
what a great experience. And I think it's only downhill from here, actually. No, I'm teasing. This was so awesome to be talking to two such like-minded souls and so wise and so, interested and interesting. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that. I hope people tune into the Abundance Zone podcast. They can find anywhere, and I've just loaded it all on YouTube too, so they can find it there. Because I'm just doing it to help, and so I want to reach the people that can be helped by it.
Yeah, we'll be sure to link it in the description below for sure.
Great. All right.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. And until next time, stay sharp.
Sharp.